Welcome to If the Public Only Knew, the show that pulls back the curtain on what it really takes to build and lead a business. Host Gary Cinderbrandt sits down with some of today's most dynamic CEOs, founders, and leaders to dig into their origin stories, hard-earned lessons, and the missteps that nearly derailed it all. These are unfiltered, no-hype conversations designed to inspire, challenge, and fuel your own journey. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
Welcome back to If the Public Only Knew. I'm your host, Gary Cinderbrandt. One of the things I've really enjoyed about doing these shows is not just the diversity of individuals I've been fortunate enough to have as guests, but also the diversity of geographic location. And today, David Henzel is joining us from Bodrum, Turkey. So I would say that you are my first guest I've had from Turkey, one or two from Europe, mostly the UK. David has a fascinating background. Started out as an engineer in the software space and started to gravitate and build companies that seem to facilitate better performance using software as a service, using his skills as an engineer, but ultimately started to move into, I guess, what you refer to as the dark side, which is the human engineering component, and has had great success in doing that, and is now leading a movement, I would say, called Love Not Fear. Is that a fair way to describe that, David, as a movement?
Yeah, I prefer the word alliance more because movement means like somebody's leading and other people are following. But I want everybody to be engaged and contribute as much as they can contribute, and not just like follow and also challenge me because I don't have the crystal ball.
So
I prefer alliance.
Where did this come from? I mean, you come out of your younger days as an engineer in programming a language which is still out there. I mean, Linux is still out there, but it's pretty arcane and technology evolves every day. At what point did you start to recognize that there was a lot more that you could contribute?
Actually, initially you said like, kind of not knowing where you start and then kind of where you end up. And I never had an idea of what I want to do. I went to 14 different schools. I got kicked out everywhere. My parents raised me without authority, and I did not vibe well with authority. So hence school was not for me. At some point I was pretty lost. I didn't know what to do with my life. And a friend of mine said like, hey, how about we start a business together? You good with computers? And I'm like, sure, I have nothing else going on. And then I found entrepreneurship, and this was like, like the moment because nobody tells me what I have to do. And yeah, I had like a variety of businesses in Germany, sold one that gave me the money to get my investor visa to move to the United States, and had a startup there and a very good exit as well. And to your question, like when did I know, or when was the aha moment? It was when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh my.
And this was she's good. Actually had it twice since then. Also a total of 2 times. Knock on wood, she's good now. But this was a very big wake-up moment for me, where I imagined myself laying on my deathbed, looking back at my life, thinking, did I really do what I was supposed to do? Did I have the impact that I want to have? Did I live a life that I would rate as worth living? And this made me question a lot of things, and also led me to selling the business that I had back then because I really want to have more impact. I want to, I guess, leave a dent and have a positive impact in the world. So this is like the starting point of me making big changes. Not chasing the Benjamins anymore. I still like money. I think money is a side effect of providing value, but not really being focused. It's coming anyway. If you provide value.
So let me go back a little bit. When you talked about someone approached you, you were good with computers, you built a business. Well, there's lots of people that are good with computers. You never hear about them. They never go anywhere. You hear about the people that are successful, but not the millions of people that try something like this that have some set of skills. Was there any sense of growth or ambition or scaling when you first built that company or worked with that other individual?
Not really, actually. Initially, it was just kind of like stumbling around and just like doing stuff, and serendipitously, one thing led to the other. We maintained in-house servers, back in the days when servers were still in the basement of companies, when there was no cloud, kind of dates me. I've been doing this for a long time. And one of our customers was the biggest manufacturer and importer of Arabic water pipes, like shisha or hookah, whatever you call it. It became really popular now. And he was very persistent. Every time I worked on their servers, he was like, come on, build an e-commerce store. I do not know anything about this tech stuff. Like, please, let's partner up. And I didn't want to do it, but he was so persistent that I just like did it. So, okay, now here's the store, now leave me alone. But then this really took off. And so I shifted from this IT management business to this e-commerce business, which went really well. And then at some point, I got really bored of it because it was not really a challenge anymore. And I saw what was going on in America, or especially in, Silicon Valley, the startup scene, which didn't really exist where I was in Germany. So I was really drawn to that. And I sold this business in 05 or 06 and then moved to Los Angeles. This sale gave me the money for my investor visa. So like kind of one thing led to the other. I had a different idea what to do there. And somebody else approached me, a friend said like, hey, we're starting the CDN thing. You have this technical background. We need somebody who does product and marketing. And so one thing always led to the other in my journey.
So fascinating. So the e-commerce for the first time, gave you exposure to the consumer side and starting to look at how people were motivated by decisions. Was the e-commerce B2B or was it B2C or
No, it was B2C. It was a
Okay.
B2C business.
So now you're interacting with consumers. So now you've got to observe certain behaviors and I assume try and optimize your e-commerce offering to appeal to them at some point. So did you feel at that point that had kind of lit a spark, something you wanted to explore further when you became bored, knowing what you needed to know within that vertical?
No, the big change was, after I had this aha moment when my wife went through breast cancer. I thought about like, what can I do that really makes an impact? And I soul searched a lot, and there was something that my wife and I figured out when our daughter was born. We're together since we're 19 years old, and our daughter is 12. I'm 48, so we've been together a very long time before we had our daughter, and we never had friction in our relationship until our daughter was born, and then we started having quite some friction. And one day I came home and after a long meeting about roles and responsibilities, and I was sitting on our couch, and Emma, our daughter, had a full diaper. And I told my wife, like, hey, honey, look, Emma has a full diaper. I was just making a tired observation, but my wife took it as like, hey, change the diaper, which was not my intention. And then we had this fight over this. And I thought, why are we fighting about this right now? And then I had this aha moment that we never talked about the roles and responsibilities we had in our household. And I thought, interesting. Let's sit down tomorrow morning and write down what you expect of me and vice versa. And doing this took away 80% of the friction we had in our life. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. If we can take other elements of business and apply to our personal life, like having, family core values, a vision, a mission, shared meetings, regular meetings, shared calendar. And doing this was like so transformational for my family and also for myself, to kind of running my life like a successful business, to have like the clarity and focus, like what really matters, and like cutting away all the FOMO and all that stuff was so transformational for me that I turned this into a course and then applied it to all the I have a portfolio of companies to all the leadership teams, and they're kind of trickling down to all the employees, and other friends that are entrepreneurs took the course or sent their team members. And so this is kind of how this initially spread.
Fascinating.
And another element why it's called Love Not Fear is, even though I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life, actually I've never had a job, so I have been an entrepreneur all my working life. I was also very shy, being an introverted geek. I would have never come on a podcast, like never in a million years. And this was always holding me back in business. Like I had a hard time managing people or running meetings, or being on a conference call with a customer was terrifying for me. And I saw somebody who's one of my best friends today. He gave a keynote speech and he was only 19 years old. It was at a conference in Vegas, and we sponsored him. So he's wearing our t-shirt and talking about our company. And I walked up to him and said, like, hey man, I'm David. We sponsor you. And he took me by the hand. And first of all, like I was so impressed that he gave this amazing keynote speech, which is really good for business if you can speak in front of people. And then he took me by the hand, introduced me to all the speakers, all the movers and shakers, the organizers, and blah. And I was just, wow, this is so good for business, this networking thing, which I never did because I'm so shy, or speaking, which I never did because I'm so shy. And I thought, I really want to change this. And I did Toastmasters twice a week. It's like public speaking classes. It's really cool if you haven't done it. I mean, not you, but audience. If you want to grow, it's an amazing environment. It doesn't cost much. So I did this twice a week, even though it was intensely painful. And I also did networking events twice a week in Los Angeles. And I talked to everybody at this event, even though it was incredibly painful. You can imagine, like, okay, next person. Hi, I'm David. Yeah. And this exposure therapy helped, over time. I got less shy. But the absolute switch was flipped in my head when my yoga teacher mentioned during a yoga class that every decision in life, you either make it from a place of love or a place of fear. And this really blew my mind because I was always operating from a place of fear. Public speaking, do they think what I'm saying is stupid? Do they think I have a weird German accent? Will I fall on my face while I walk up on stage? And it was always about me and full of fear, and then you can't really present. But if I turn it around and I think like, hey, what I'm sharing here can potentially help some of the people in the audience with their life or with their business, that's very easy because it's not about me and I'm doing it from a place of love. Or sales. I hated sales with a passion. I only sold because we have to sell or we die because we're a startup. But I always hated the process. I felt like a used car salesman shoving something down somebody else's throat. But once I understood the love and fear concept, if I sell and I know this product is good for you, you actually need this will improve your business or your life, I can be a pushy salesman saying like, hey, Gary, come on, man, do yourself the favor, buy this. And you will feel it's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of like wanting to improve your life and not because I want to pay my mortgage, hit my numbers, or buy myself a new car. And I can give you more and more examples about this. But this was so transformational for me that I became like really obsessed with helping people to make more decisions from a place of love and create company cultures where people do their job out of love and not out of fear. And so we built a self-leadership program that helps people to figure out what they really want in life and also helping people to align with the company mission and vision, with their role. And this has been so transformational in all of my businesses that I became very passionate about sharing this
I have so
with
many
others.
directions I can go. I've changed my next question probably 4 times in the last 3 minutes. So,
I talk too
um,
much, sorry.
no, that's fine because what I try and do is I try and connect things that I'm hearing my guests talk about with what was the chelating, what was the precipitating emotion or response. So overcoming fear of public speaking, which by the way is, always on everyone's top three list. It's big. I've done 300 to 400 presentations in front of groups between 500 and 500. And no one ever taught me how to do it. I was just always very comfortable doing it because the way I looked at it, these were just friends I hadn't met yet. And some of these things lasted 6 hours. So I had to basically, you throw yourself out there. But one of the things I realized when I discovered this in myself, and maybe you discovered it as well, was if there's something out there that I never knew I could do, or in your case, that you were deathly afraid of, did that then stimulate your belief that there were other things that you may have been hesitant to do that you could also overcome that weren't necessarily related? You were able to
Yes.
conquer that uncertainty? Talk to me about that.
I mean, just another funny example from my wife always used to ask me to do stuff around the house, like, oh, could you hang up this picture or could you assemble this piece of furniture? And I hated to do things like this. I prefer to do my taxes over this. And I always did it from a place of fear because I don't want to have conflict with her. And when I do the job in a state of fear, then I hate the job and the result is often not ideal. And my wife has very high standards. And so I have a fight with her afterwards because it's not up to her spec if I, what I've built there. And so now knowing this love and fear concept, I still sometimes start out of fear, but then switch to a place of love to make her happy and to make our place nice. And then it's flowing much, much better. So it's like it really helps. So an example from one of my team members, the company in LA that we had was very fast growing, and we had the problem that one team did not know what the other one was doing, and The solution for this that I came up with was an internal newsletter. So I asked my assistant to please go to each department head, figure out what they did last week, what they plan on doing next week, and kind of compile it in a newsletter and send it out on Monday mornings. And every time she gave me the draft, it was really terrible. Honey, I'm on the podcast. Could you be quiet? Yes, thank you. My daughter just came in. That's home
Emma.
office situation. Yes, Emma just came in. So my assistant always came with this very poor draft of this newsletter. And I sat her down in my office and said, like, hey, I think you're doing this from a place of fear, not from a place of love. And she looked at me like, WTF, like, what do you want from me? So I told her, if you do this from a place of love, you'd really do your best to figure out what they did. And also what our CTO did, because she was not super technical at this point. And you'd compile it in a way that people are looking forward to this, that they enjoy it, it's funny, make it entertainment, make it good, that they're really looking forward to the next one, they read the whole thing. But I think you're doing this only from a place of fear. You're doing this because David said this thing has to go out on Mondays at 4 p.m. and this is your motivation of doing it. And this really clicked with her and never had to correct anything in this newsletter. And at few iterations later, we had a video newsletter that she compiled and cut together. So it's quite amazing when people switch from this fear to acting out of love mindset.
What are the conditions that you think are prevalent now? Maybe they've been here all along, where the default for most people who perceive risk, and I think most people can't even define risk, but most people who perceive any alteration of anything they do as having risk to it, and they're just satisfied to make every day look like the day before. Is that a societal impact? Is it because I don't see it as part of natural evolution, or we never would have invented anything. How do you look at that? And do you think that is the default move? Is to go about your life in a way that doesn't risk whatever it is you had that day, as opposed to living aspirationally and thinking, what am I going to learn today and what can I do?
Things like in love and fear, you can also say abundance or scarcity. You can
Yeah.
be in an abundance mindset or in a scarcity mindset, or like kind of making this agreement with yourself. Is the world, the universe, or God is pro David or not? And I made this decision a long time ago that everything's happening for me, not to me. Even like if something is not fun right now, there's a reason for this and there's something good is coming from it, some learning or whatever. So I like holding this belief and then truly acting from a place of love, a place of abundance, or place of trust. I think this is like what you need in order to be successful these days. There's yeah.
Many cultures, many religions have beliefs in karma. Leave it better than you found it. In Judaism, it's tikkun. In Buddhism, it's something else. That whatever a situation you touch, regardless of what you think might be in it for you at the time, leave it better than it was if you have some way to impact it. And it tends to come back over time, doesn't it?
Fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I found this like that's just how I perceive the universe. Just given you'll receive.
Take me back to the first time you spoke to a group and you realized you were actually connecting with them, that you could see people smiling and nodding their heads. And instead of sitting back like this, they were forward in their chair. What was that like? Do you remember that?
No, I do not remember this because I have a condition called aphantasia, which I cannot create mental images. And so I cannot reproduce images in my head, but I also can't reproduce sounds, taste, smells, or emotions. So everything's kind of like saved like in a, say, text file or like Excel sheet or bullet points. With aphantasia, you also have SDAM, which stands for severely deficient autobiographical memory. So I have like a very low resolution memory of like what happened in the past. Just like really bullet points. And also if I meet you somewhere, I would not recognize you because you're out of context. If you tell me, hey, Gary from the podcast, everything knows, everything opens up like, okay, wealth management, blah, blah, blah. But otherwise so I cannot answer your question. Like, do I remember when this was the first time? Because like my body does not retain this information.
That's fascinating. When you look at a numbers spreadsheet, when you look at data, do you see it or do you see colors?
Nothing. It's black.
Okay.
It's like
So
my,
you
my
are
head saves logical concepts. That's like how
right.
I operate.
but you remember why you wanted to get married.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like on a logical level that she's like the coolest person I've met, and we
Okay.
clicked so much. So yeah,
And you remember your first date. You better say yes. Listen
yeah,
to the
yeah.
podcast, you're in trouble.
Actually, no, I have I found that living without a mask is very beneficial.
Yeah.
Just like being who you are, then you either repel people fast because they think this guy is freaking crazy. But this is cool because these people are not of your tribe anyway. But if you're open and vulnerable and do not wear a mask, you also pull in people that are of your tribe really fast. So I
So you could not communicate something. If you tried to communicate something that wasn't true, your head would probably explode because then
no,
you'd
it's
have to
also
remember it.
yes, correct. I lying is like a fool's errand for me because I will not be able to remember it. So like it's like just being authentic and real. It's like it's way too much effort. To do something
The
like this.
one of the problems all the militaries have is around PTSD.
Hmm.
And PTSD, the reason it persists is it lodges in a different part of your brain. It lodges in your frontal lobe. There's no clock up there. You'd be immune to that because your emotional memories really don't anchor in any
Correct.
context.
I'm like trauma proof to some degree.
You would be you want to stay away from the scientists. They want to study you.
Yeah, actually,
Um,
I found out about this 3 years ago that I have this, and I interviewed the person who coined the phrase aphantasia. It was like discovered in 2014, and I had him on my podcast, and I really drilled into this. And apparently, between 2 and 5% of people have this condition. It's just like fairly new, and I'm part of the entrepreneurs organization. I gave a presentation about aphantasia in my chapter, and we had like 100 some people in the audience, and 5 people came to me and said like, dude, like you're messing with my head. I think I have the same thing. And one woman came like said, thank you so much. You perfectly explained my husband to me. Thank you so much. So it's not that it's not that rare actually. It's just those people are unaware of it.
but so after you started to gain comfort with public speaking, to me, then that sounds like a switch just got flipped.
Mhm,
You were here and then you were there and it was done.
mhm,
It wasn't, I
mhm.
can't wait to do it again to see how good I feel. It
No,
was,
no.
I was fearful of this skill. I punched through the fear and now I'm over here.
To some degree, I still kind of revert to, I call myself a recovering introvert. So I have to kind of like, I still feel emotions in the moment, but I can't recall the old ones. I just like on a logical level, but I can not the feeling. And that's also how it's my guidance system. If something feels good, I lean into it. If it doesn't feel good, I stop and take a step back and think like, why is this not feeling good? Is this against my values? Is this wrong? Or is this just outside of my comfort zone? And if it's outside of my comfort zone, I can easily like reprogram myself and tell myself, okay, dude, like this actually makes all sense in the world to do this because it's in line with this. And I can push myself to do it.
Reprogram your comfort zone. Coming back to what happened with you and your wife sitting down and negotiating roles, there was a common goal there that was easily identified. There was something out there. You were in one place, space and time, and there was something you wanted to get to, which was not to be in conflict,
Yes,
which was
harmony.
to
Yes.
improve. Right. So there was a goal. There was something out there. As you translate that to your various portfolio companies or in your coaching, do you find it difficult sometimes to align that goal across the organization when there's just an employment relationship as opposed to a lifelong commitment?
Yeah, I mean, like this is, not sure if you're familiar with self-managed companies. There's a book called Reinventing Organizations, and it talks about how can you create a company where everybody's acting like a intrapreneur, kind of really acting like so the team really being aligned with what we're doing here, excited about the vision and mission of the company, um, and also that this aligns with their personal goals. And this is like what I'm striving for to create in my companies. Also with Love and Fear, this is what we're doing to help companies to create more entrepreneurs and then to really empower people to fully lean into um, their role in the business,
In a
also from
growing
an intrinsic
company,
point.
in a
Mhm.
growing company, how do you test for that if you're hiring?
So we have a bunch of, actually, we also have a recruiting company called lnfpeople.com where we hire people on not only a culture, but also a skill and a team fit. And we do this we built some AI that allows people to really, in a few minutes, define their personal vision, mission, and core values. And we also have a personality test in there. And so this is like one side to kind of like filter out people that are a fit for this. The other thing is in the recruiting process, we really hone in on core values. For example, we have core values in the video in the job ad already, where we talk about like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're excited about, these are our values. In the conversation with the recruiter, we talk about values. The end of the last page on the contract is every core value, and if the initial next to each one and sign that I'm going to live up to those. And then once you're hired, the first thing we do is we give you a conversation with you where we share our core values and core value stories to make you understand like how it's lived, not just like a word. And I like to be, I mentioned before, like with the mask, pushing people away or dragging them in. At Maxi we had a core value called build cool shit because we want to attract engineering nerds who want to build cool shit. And we want to send people away who, want to come with a tie to work and would feel uncomfortable somebody using the word shit in their core values because somebody who would like be offended by this would just not fit our culture at all.
I,
So I'm a big believer just like push people away as fast as
yeah,
possible if they're not a fit. Same like in dating or anything. It's just like be who you are and just like figure it out now and don't have headaches later.
I'll share a story with you once we're done. That the reason I'm smiling and laughing is I'm involved in a project right now that has a senior engineer, a full stack guy that just got tired of building tech. And when I pitched him, he said, "This looks really cool." He goes, "And I don't want to build bullshit anymore. I want to build stuff that works for people." I said, "Let's go." So it's fascinating you should say that because that the alignment there is he knows if we're successful, we're going to make a pretty big impact in the financial services business, which is much more humanistic and requires exactly what you talk about to be successful in wealth management. It's not a question of understanding markets. It's a question of understanding people. And
Yeah.
you're not necessarily going to understand everybody, but the way the big firms are set up is they'll go out and they'll hire 10 new advisors, and 3 years later, only two of them are going to be left. And the two of them are going to end up with a book of clients where they don't even like half of them.
Hmm.
And it's a problem. And I lived that world for 40 years, and I was very fortunate because if I didn't get a good vibe from someone, my attitude was not only could I not take a long drive with these people, like 30 years, I don't even want to go around the block with them.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like I think you're going to be better off someplace else. And I ended up with a wonderful group of clients and families that I cared for 4 decades, but I loved every one of them. And if I had a bad feeling about people, I kind of advised them to go someplace else because you don't want to have that feeling. Because it
So
hurts
it's
everybody in that case.
yes, and also like you want to look forward to Mondays, and it's very crucial actually with in terms of insurance and life insurance stuff like this. I was on a flight, I don't know, from LA to New York or something like this, and the person next to me was selling life insurance and investments and stuff like this. And we talked about love, not fear, and he said, and he was like very successful. He said like I'm the top salesperson in my group, and I used to be at the bottom. And previously, I always sold what gave me the best margins. And I didn't perform well, but then I switched to just selling what is the best person for what is the best product for the individual, and I started crushing it. Also telling people like, hey, don't buy this. This is not good. So kind of selling from a place of love versus from a place of fear. And in Los Angeles, we had our insurance guy that we had for the business. He talked me into getting I always get confused. Life insurance where you kind of like do they do the investment for you? What's it
Yeah,
called? It's
a
not term.
variable life
Yeah.
policy. Yeah,
And I did the math, and if I just like have the discipline of like putting this money in the market myself, I just make way more money. It's like the first 8 years or something like this, we're just like going to them. I was like, dude, like, why would you sell something like this to me? I thought you're my friend. And it's he was so touched by this that he left the business, actually.
interesting. Yeah, it's funny because they make you drink the Kool-Aid, and there's a lot of people that work for insurance companies that say they're in the investment business. They're not. They're in the insurance business. And there's a need for insurance. I get it, but it's not an investment. It just flat out isn't. Um, and the best ROI is if you die early. So, when I worked for the major broker dealers, I was licensed in everything, including insurance. And I only touched it if I absolutely had to. But
Mm.
for the most part, I told people, look, I don't want to deal with this. Go to this person over here. I trust them. They'll get you taken care of. Because you're young, you don't have a lot of money, you need enough insurance to replace your lifestyle if God forbid you're not here. You get older, it kind of changes. But it's not the same thing. That's wonderful that the guy finally recognized it. I see things like tax deferred annuities inside retirement accounts. And I ask them, if it's raining outside, do you put on your raincoat and open your umbrella to watch TV on the inside? Well, what do you mean? Well, that's what you're doing. You, get your bathrobe on and put your slippers on because you don't need it. Oh, why did he sell it to me? And I'm like, well, let's talk about that. So
It's
it's fascinating. I think I am so aligned with you on so many of these things, but there is a process that you are able to go through with self-discovery, where for most people, they'll get to the point where they recognize a certain thing, but and they know they need to change, but they won't make that jump. It's like, let's leave well enough alone because well enough is, in their mind,
Mhm.
it's just good enough. All these excuses, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good and all the rest of it. So I deal with a lot of people. I do a lot of consulting work with very senior financial advisors. I was one of them. I speak their language. And this could be a person that's making a significant seven-figure income. And they've got 300 or 400 households they're responsible for. They're talking to 75 of them. The other 325 are largely ignored. They're not contributing much. But when you say, you should move those relationships to your junior partner to give them experience in developing it and overcompensate them for what they can build on their own, they look at you like, I'd rather cut
You're
off my
crazy.
arm. And they can just show them the numbers and say, this makes no sense. And if someone asks one of these people you're ignoring for a referral, you think they're going to mention you? Then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, yeah, right. But it's an obvious thing. It's still a very difficult thing to do. So what would you say to someone like that, where all the logic, everything's in your favor, they know you're right, but they're afraid to just take that jump, or at least they think is a jump. To me, it's just getting back on the right path. How do you motivate that, David?
It's an interesting question. I think it's like this. I have a portfolio of companies and lots of business partners. And one of the hardest things that I always struggle with them is to have a focused positioning in terms of what customers we're going after. Because like if you're too broad, then you will not stand out. If I, God forbid, would have a heart issue, I would like to go to a doctor who speaks perfect English because I live in Turkey, who is specialized in middle-aged men with this heart condition. I do not want to go to a general doctor. So I think it's really important to stand out and like have this clear positioning on who you're focusing on. But this feels like they're castrating themselves, so kind of cutting away all this opportunity, even though they will be much more successful if they focus on just one thing. So I think in general, it's like a hard thing for people to let go and kind of have this focus. So I'm not sure how to convince them. Aside from like it's the right thing to do and you're not off service, and money is a side effect of providing value, just like provide more value to his people and also helping. I don't know how the structure works. If you have a junior broker, I guess if they're doing well, then it kind of trickles up to you, right? Is that the case?
Yeah, unfortunately, though, most of them are not doing well. There's a shortage, and this is worldwide. There's about 38% of professional wealth managers are retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. And the replacement is for every 10 that retire, there's only one that makes it through their first 3 years. So
Hmm.
the business is shrinking dramatically. And as these advisors retire, 50% of their clients are going to seek help elsewhere. because the
Mm.
junior broker just doesn't have the time, the experience, or the temperament, or the ability to deal with some of the more wealthy clients, nor do they have the ability to go out and build their own book, which for guys like me, you had to figure out on your own.
Mm.
And you had to figure out how to build the right book. I was lucky. I reached out because I knew how little I knew, and I was able to find mentors and just sit at their knee and be taught the right way. But for the big firms, it's a numbers game. We'll hire 10, two are still going to be here in 5 years.
Mm.
And if they're here for 12 years, we're finally going to make some money. But it's a real problem. A lot of
Wow.
the senior folks, they end up taking money out of their pocket to keep the junior people on the team just so they have someone to give their business to when they leave. Then the business just evaporates because the junior person has
Wow.
no idea what to do.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's McKinsey did a great report on it earlier this year, which if you're in the industry, everyone read and they're all literally petrified, as well they should be. And I work with a lot of senior advisors at the big firms, and it's not an easy thing. There are solutions that have to be engineered, but it does require taking that step over the line from that which you fear and all of your actions are dictated to that which you love.
It's with fear. I had love and fear. I've been playing with. I say playing on purpose for 12 years or so. So kind of my hobby on the side. And I never really fully leaned into it for two reasons. A, I thought if I fully lean into it, all of my other businesses will evaporate, which is like absolutely unreasonable because they're like solid businesses run by very good people. And I'm not even that involved in most of them. And the second fear I had was that I was pointed out by a friend of mine who's a coach. He said, it feels like there's this girl you love for 20 years, but you always hook up with her friends because if it doesn't work out with her, it's too painful. And this is like love and fear. I really feel it's my life's mission to grow this. And if I would fail at it, I fail at life. So it was like too scary to actually play with. So it's overcoming fears is often. But after he told me, I was like, such so mind blowing to me, and it even got me emotional because it was so true.
It's a great
And I
metaphor.
started leaning into it. So like overcoming fears, I guess like I kind of have finding the right emotional or logical reason, depending on like how your brain is wired, to do it.
So, last topic. Tell me about your portfolio companies and tell me what about each one interested you to make that investment.
I've I've bought only a few. The majority I built. I like to scratch my own itch. Initially, I built a BPO, business process outsourcing, because I hired people abroad during the times at Max CDN. We tried to hire people in LA for nighttime support, and we just couldn't find anybody. And then we went overseas and we found amazing talent. So it's called LTV Plus, and we do customer support, mainly customer support for e-commerce and software as a service mainly. And this was I built because I want, after reading Conscious Capitalism. Are you familiar with Conscious Capitalism?
I am
The book
not.
by John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, wrote it. He
Hmm.
makes the point that an old business or the old way of doing business is you have to increase shareholders' value. This is why the business exists, to make the owner of the business rich. And the new approach is a conscious business. In the conscious business, you do good by all stakeholders, meaning suppliers, customers, employees, community, the world, kind of like that. Everything the business touches, it improves. And he makes the point that these businesses are not only the best vehicle to have a positive impact in the world, but also they are more financially successful than the ones who only focus on increasing shareholders' value, and makes like very interesting points in this book. So this book really impacted my thinking, and I thought like, I can go back to business and have a positive impact. And so I want to give as many people as possible a great place to work. Currently, we have like 600 employees or so in this business, and my goal is to get to 10,000. And we mainly hire. Everything's remote, so we like to hire mothers who work from home. So it's like the one of the businesses. Another one is a marketing agency called Shortlist.io. I just needed it, and so we built it. I always like to build things and then for myself and then offer it to others. Initially, Love Not Fear was a do-it-yourself course, but I had a very low completion rate, and I found that if I do cohort-based coaching, it increases massively. So I need to build a platform for that. It's called UpCoach. Then the latest one is LNF People. It's a recruiting business to hire people who are not only a skill fit, but also a culture fit. Because I'm very passionate about. I've seen how much impact this has in a business if you only have people that are really mission vision aligned. Love Not Fear itself, we provide personal and organizational development. I think we talked about this. And a few software as a service companies. I could, it's quite a long list, so I can keep on going for a little
Okay.
longer.
So in other words, you can't leave well enough alone.
We also have a retreat center here in Bodrum where we host
Okay.
a lot of retreats, and I don't know, I really enjoy building businesses, and I like to get so much excitement from like working with partners and helping them to build this business and making them financially independent. So I just really enjoy that and have 10 ideas an hour, and I just I really I built Love Not Fear and this applying business principles to my personal life to find more focus, because I was always doing so many things, but now at least it's kind of like focus under the umbrella of Love Not Fear and kind of making workplaces better or helping people to succeed, organizational or personal development wise. Before it was like all over the map. But yeah, I definitely struggle with only doing one thing. It's not part of my personality.
How will that resolve? You're a young man, relatively speaking. You've got a lot of runway ahead of you. What are you thinking about next?
I will stick with Love Not Fear for the long run. I think that's going to be my main passion project for quite some time. The next step may be that we buy companies and turn them into co-ops, basically giving them back to the employees and make it them run the business, kind of like a self-managed thing. I think this is the future. Like the wealth, this gap is like way too big between, it's like, and before it was like, how was it? Worker makes $1. For every dollar worker makes, the CEO makes like $40 or something like this, or
Yeah.
43, and now it's like 460 or something like this. So like, and so kind of like the analogy of the entrepreneur comes with his new sports car on the parking lot of the office, and the employee comes down, sees the car, and says like, "Oh my God, amazing!" It's like, "Yeah, you want to come in and feel how sit, smell it, feel it." He's like, "Yeah, it's amazing." And then the entrepreneur says like, "If you work really, really hard, maybe in 2 or 3 years, I can buy another one." So kind of like against that, kind of like share the love, and like people work so much harder and better if they have like this alignment, and they also see that they make more the more work they put in. And I think it's not only the right thing to do, it's also, I think, the future of work.
David, thank you so much for joining today. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. It's just fun watching you iterate to an answer to perhaps a question you haven't had before. But your consistency, your spirit, your energy, it's infectious. And I've tried to live my life with a lot of the same thoughts, and listening to you, I'd like to go back and do it again. Because
Always down for that. You ask great questions, and it's fun talking with you. So I'm happy to be back.
I really appreciate that. Our guest today has been David Henzel, Love Not Fear, and a bunch of other stuff. David, where do we find more about you and Love Not Fear on the web? How do we learn more about this?
So you can go to lovenotfear.com, and if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, David Henzel, and if you tell me that you heard me on Gary's podcast, then I'll accept you. Otherwise, I get way too much spam.
That's fascinating. So it means if I reach out and connect with you when we're done, you'll accept?
Yes, sir.
Okay. David, thanks again. It's been Gary Sinderbrand with David Henzel of Love Not Fear. Check him out. You're going to be amazed. I know I was. We'll see you on the next show. Take good care.
Thanks for tuning in to If the Public Only Knew. Don't forget to follow the show and share it with anyone who's ready for the real raw stories behind the business successes. Join Gary next time for another powerful conversation that will leave you inspired and ready to take action.